Welcome back, class. In this section, we are going to discuss socioeconomic status and poverty. We're going to first explore what is the definition of socioeconomic status. A lot of people believe that socioeconomic status only deals with income. However, socioeconomic status is when people are grouped that have similar occupational, educational, and economic characteristics. So you can think about blue collar versus white collar, which we'll discuss a little bit later. When we have various statuses, that is going to imply that there are certain inequalities. So for example, if there are different level of prestige and occupations or different levels of economic resources, more than likely people are going to have different levels of power based on their socioeconomic status. And when I say different levels of power, I mean different levels of power to influence a community's institutions. So, power to influence the government, power to influence the school system, power to influence businesses. Different levels of power are accounted for in socioeconomic status. Usually, people that are the lower have a lower SES usually don't have the same power that people do that have a higher socioeconomic status. These differences in the ability to control resources and to participate in society's rewards of being able to control these resources produces unequal opportunities. Socioeconomic status is usually broken into low SES and middle SES. When we talk about low socioeconomic status, more than likely people are talking about people that have low income, that are working class, and what is considered blue collar. In middle socioeconomic status, people usually have middle income and they usually have managerial positions and they're usually white collar. I don't know if you all know the difference between blue collar and white collar, but blue collar is more of, hands-on work. So you can think about making cars, for example, or building cars or fixing cars, things that you have to do manually. You have to use your hands for. That would be a part of the job description for someone that's blue collar. Versus white collar, you may see them going into the office, for example, being a manager, being an accountant. Having a position in the office is more likely, more known as white collar. So that's when people say blue collar versus white collar. They're usually talking about socioeconomic status and the types of jobs that people have. So my question for you, as we're talking about families and neighborhoods and schools in regards to the socioeconomic status, my question that I want you all to think about is how can parents' socioeconomic status influence children's adjustment? That's a question that I want you all to think about as you all work with children in the future. Think about how SES can influence child's adjustment and their development overall. So we talked about socioeconomic status. We're going to take a deeper dive into looking at low socioeconomic status, specifically families that are low income. Here are some quick facts. About 20% of the United States children live in families whose income is below the poverty line. Children that are Black, Latino, and American Indian or Native American usually have the highest poverty rates compared to European American or white families or white children in America. What is also important to note is that single mothers are more likely to be in poverty than single fathers. That is a question on the quiz. So I hope you all get that right. If you watch this, that's an answer for the quiz on the quiz. Parents' education, their employment, their race and ethnicity are also other factors that are associated with children's experience of economic insecurity. So there are other things at play when we're talking about poverty. And that's important to know and understand. Even, like I said, single mothers are more likely to be in poverty than single fathers. So even gender has a role to play in how gender influences poverty. There are effects of poverty, and a lot of times the effects of poverty are negative. So, for example, children that are poor may be more likely to be exposed to families that have issues. They may be around parents or guardians that may fight a lot, or might be a lot of chaos in the home. They may grow up in more dangerous neighborhoods, and so because of that, they may not have the best schools. They may not have the best school system, and because of that, they may not have access to as many services compared to children that have families that live above the poverty level. They also may not read as many, children may also not read as many books if they are experiencing poverty compared to children that have families that have a higher income. So, like I said, poverty is also influential in the development of children. There is a way to counter poverty's effects, and that is to provide services for children and parent or caregivers. So that is thinking about the helping two generations. You help the child and you help the parent and caregivers, and you do that because you can help the child. It's not enough to help the child. You also have to help the parents understand and get the services that they need so that they can provide the life that a child needs. So it's great just to help the children, but it's even better to help the parents and caregivers because you're teaching the parents the tools and providing them the tools that they need to provide their child with a better life. And they may not have access to that if you only provide services for the child. An example of providing services for the children and parent and caregivers, an example of that is a New Hope project. And this was where they actually provided services for children and parent and caregivers. And they found that the Black boys were more optimistic about job and career possibilities compared to children that did not participate in this project. So there are ways and programs to counter poverty's effects. But it would be great if we didn't have children living in poverty. So really the goal here for you is to understand that poverty can have detrimental effects on children and parents. It is our job to help and give them the resources that they need. Okay, I'm going to see you all on the next video, and we're going to discuss ethnicity and immigration.